thank you very much to give me the opportunity to make this presentation and to share with you all the works we already have done in Europe, and to make this today with all these attendees. So if you don't mind, first of all, I will show you the summary of my presentation. And in the meanwhile, I would like to introduce a little bit myself. So my name is Christophe Colinet. I'm the EUROCITIES chairman of Standardization and Interoperability Working Group for EUROCITIES. And I'm also an ETSI chairman for a working group on which is called, ATTM SDMC, which is a working group looking at the sustainable digital multi-service networks for cities. I was the former vice chairman of Industry Specification Group SIM for context information management. And I will try today to explain what the different works we are doing now and what we are looking for in the next future. So, first of all, let's have a look to the ETSI activities, which cover nearly the full IoT ecosystem now. And we will more focus on 4 different working groups I'm more involved in. The first of them is ATTM, because of course I'm the chairman of this group. The second one is 1M2M, which is a library for IoT, for interoperable IoT. The third one is SIM, which is a context information management. This industry specification group is led by Lindsay Frost, who is also an expert from the NEC laboratories. And the last one, which is not the least, is SAREF. SAREF is a group dealing with ontology. Ontology is the way to make interoperable the different, how can I explain it in a nutshell? I would say it's a way to name the things the same way all over the world, and to develop just one app to do the same all over the world. But we will go into details in the next following presentation. So, if we look at the public authorities' concerns and challenges, we now have to deal with different new services coming from the outside, and many different private providers which don't really cooperate with cities authorities, and nor even consult them, the cities authorities, prior to launching the services. This is the first example, is the Mobike provider, which is a Chinese provider of free-floating bikes in Europe. They arrived 2 years ago with bikes and prototypes, and the issue for us was that these bikes were put on the sidewalks, on the pavements of the cities, without any consideration with the access for disabled people or elderly people. That led us to the necessity to hire new teams just to manage those assets, which were everywhere on the pavements and sidewalks. And we had an issue with the taxation of these new services. We couldn't do it properly because we couldn't anticipate this arrival. But we also had many different issues with other providers, like, for example, Airbnb or Uber. With Airbnb, for example, this service made the rents inside the city center increase the rate that made the people who lived in the city center previously to go to the outskirts of the city because they couldn't afford the rent of these flats, for example. So there are many consequences for the city servants, and we have to look at these new services. If we now look at the different main pillars of this smart city, on a city perspective, we think that we have three main pillars. The first one is, of course, ICT, because we have to collect, to manage data in order to drive the cities and to support the decision making. But I would say this is quite the easiest way to build a smart city. Because the second pillar is about the governance, and the governance is a very, very important topic. It's how to make work together all the different stakeholders in the city. Of course, the providers, but also utilities and the public authorities and the citizen, which are the third pillar of the smart city, and they are key and privileged player at the heart of this design for the new smart city services. So let's look at the citizen and at the concerns. To address this pillar, we are looking at a statement from UN Habitat, which is one of the departments of the United Nations, and they propose to deliver a fair smart city service to look at the 5 different important following statements. The first one is that citizens have to have an universal and equal access to the internet, and not only to the internet, but also to the digital literacy. So they have to be able to use the internet. The second one is about the privacy and the data protection and the security, which is for a while a very important topic dealt by the European Commission with GPD, for example, which is a policy for privacy and security of personal data. There is also a topic about the transparency, the accountability, and the non-discrimination of data. We must have a look at the participatory and the democracy inclusion of the citizen in the smart city design process. And the last, but also important topic is to have an open and ethical digital service standards. So anyone will be able and allowed to use the technology they really choose and expect. This statement is supported by the Cities Coalition for the Digital Rights. This is a nascent organization which was founded in 2018, in order to promote, to support, and to defend the right of city residents and visitors. There are 6 months. We have the first outcomes. We have 45 members from 5 different continents, 6 languages: English, Spanish, Catalan, French, Italian, and Albanian. 4 international gatherings, the most best, the Smart City Expo Barcelona, the Helsinki AI, and the We Make the City in Amsterdam. We had 3 different conference and forum presentations from EUROCITIES, from Smart Cities, New York Cities, and New York City Forum, with 3 major global partners. So, of course, the United Nations Habitat, and the United Nations Human Rights, and a network of cities, which is called United Cities and Local Governments, also supported by the United Nations. 2 international organizations adopting the digital rights principles. They were during the G20 in Tokyo Communique, which was during the Osaka G20 forum in June last year, and the US Conference of Major Mayors Resolutions. There is a website to know more, with 29 different local case studies which are already showcased. So that was for the citizen point of view. But the main point, and our point of view as cities representative, is interoperability. The interoperability is something which is key for the development of smart cities. It is key to get confidence in the solutions which are implemented. It is also key for the sustainability of the solutions. So, as you can see in this scheme, which illustrates the mobility service, we have 5 different layers which have to be interoperable between them to avoid the vendor lock-in and to stimulate the market. The first of them is for the transportation company, which is a coordination layer, and the last one is about the transportation user experience layer, just to be very seamless. So, okay, how to get this interoperability? What's the European approach to this interoperability? How to transform, in fact, an heterogeneous and siloed legacy infrastructures we have already deployed in the cities to an interoperable and industrialized smart city services. In Europe, we think we have 3 different main stakeholders which are managed and organized by the European Commission. We have on one side the European cities networks, for example, EUROCITIES, which is a network of more than 140 cities over Europe. But we also have the Open and Agile Smart Cities organization, which represents 150 cities across 4 different continents. So it's a more worldwide organization. And the third one, Green for Users, is an organization which mixed users and providers. So the interest of this kind of network is to discuss between them providers and users. The other important point to look at is to bring this interoperability is to use the European projects as a tool to make the proof of concepts of the different interoperability scheme we want to build in Europe. So you have here three different projects I will describe later in the presentation. But starting from the Espresso, which was a support action, to the implementation of Synchronicity, which was a large-scale pilot, Horizon 2020 project, to prove this concept, which were implemented in the support actions, which were developed in the support actions. And the third, but very important stakeholder of interoperability in Europe is also the European standardization organizations. So the both of them, Senelec and of course ETSI, which is very much involved in all the telecommunications and standardization for the cities. Well, so starting from the Espresso project, the Espresso project was a support action launched in 2015 by the DG Connect, which is one of the directorates of the European Commission. And the support action, which lasts 18 months, first produced this scheme we received for comments and remarks. And this scheme, on our point of view, was absolutely unuseful, was useful for the technicians, but absolutely unuseful for cities representatives, for the policymakers, for the different stakeholders, except for the technicians. So we decided in 2016 to restart the project and reconsider the urban platform for cities as this new scheme, more simple and more just to divide the platform in three different layers. From the bottom of the scheme, you have IoT, so Internet of Things, and other, which is existing legacy systems in cities. The second one is a data lake, where the data is gathered and collected. And the third one, which is the upper one, is all what is looking at the access services and the domain services. We call it the application zone. And the reflection we had was that we didn't need to standardize everything in this platform, but we had to look very deeply at the interfaces of these different layers. We called the pivotal points of interoperability, which is a concept from the US, and we named it MIMS, which is an acronym for minimum interoperability mechanism, MIMS. And these MIMS, in fact, had to deal with what we call the north band, and then what we call the south band. That was the concept. But after this concept, we wanted to really prove that this concept was operational in the field. And to prove it, we in Bordeaux launched a call in 2017 to equip a smart city district which was located in the north of the city, and to manage 220 lampposts, a dozen of EV chargers, some street access control systems. We also wanted to have a look at the energy management in the public buildings of the district, looking at the meters of water, gas, electricity, and looking at the smart bills too. And to do so, we just wrote a procurement which specified that the sensors connectivity to this IoT network had to be compliant with the 1M2M specification release 2, which was published in September 2016 and describes a standardized API. That was the point about 1M2M I quickly described at the introduction of my presentation, during the introduction of my presentation. And after this procurement, we had 9 different providers that provided us solutions, but those solution providers were coming from different backgrounds, and they wanted to propose to deliver a global standardization smart city services portfolio. However, they could just address a part of the solution. For example, you have 2 different companies from smart lighting called Citylum and Citeos. 2 of them from the network infrastructures, Portland, SNEF, from the water and sanitation, Suez, from telecom operators, and so on. And there was only one, whose name is P, who is an integrator of the different components of the smart city services. And as a result, we got we selected SPI because of the price, because they proposed the cheapest solution. It was also the best technical one, and strangely, it was the only one which was compliant with 1M2M. It was also a test for us to know if the providers could be compliant with standardization we put in the procurement. So we had this answer, and we finally could implement this solution in Bordeaux. This implementation is now visited by many different cities all over the world. For example, the last one was representatives from Hyderabad, the Triple IT. Triple IT is an academy in Hyderabad in India, which visited us just before the COVID crisis. So that was about the southbound. What about the northbound? As the vice chairman of this ESG SIM and GSI LD working group with Lindsay Frost, I had the opportunity to see all the advantages of this new generation standardized interface, linked data with linked data, to be able to address complex sets of data in a simple way. And I wanted also to prove it, to make a proof of concept of this GSILD interface. And to do so, we had also another opportunity through European project too, which name is Synchronicity, And in this synchronicity, we had an open call to fund the development of a real, I would say, to make a use case real in the field, thanks to an open source implementation of NGSILD, which is called Chain. Chain.io is an open source implementation of this NGSILD. And the purpose of this was, thanks to the Open IoT platform we already rolled out with 1M2M, to implement a use case, which was the following one. We wanted to bring the EV drivers a very accurate information about the EV chargers we had on the district, to give them the more precise information about the availability of EV chargers, the compatibility of this EV charger with their car, the time to recharge their vehicle, the time to go to the EV charger, and all this depending on traffic conditions, on weather forecast, on many different criteria to provide to the driver the most accurate information they need, in order, of course, to make use of these EVs the more safe and the more comfortable possible for the citizen. And that was also implemented in last year, in 2019. It's now operating in Bordeaux. I'm just looking at the time to see if I think I'm a little bit late, but to conclude my presentation, I would like to emphasize the importance of Europe-Japan cooperation. The international agreements on standards will give more confidence for the public sector and will enlarge market for the business. To do so, it's important to share our experience with foreign countries, to disseminate the best practices between Europe and the other countries, and to create a long-term partnership between cities, academics, and startups. We had the example of standICT.eu, which was a project led by the European Commission to spread the standardization outside Europe. And there was also an example of collaboration with India, which was very interesting. I could have many different sharing opportunities with my colleagues from India. And we now agreed on implementing the same standardized solutions either in Europe or in India. So thank you very much for your attention. It's very weird to make a presentation without anybody in front of me, but I'm ready for any questions, and I will try to give you the best answers I can. So thank you very much for your attention. Yeah, a smart city, citizen-centric I think there are two main topics you have to address. The first one is about the confidence people can have in the management of their own data, of their personal data. This is a key point, because if you don't have the confidence of the people, you won't be able to bring any service to the citizen. We have a very interesting example here in France about a new intelligence or a smart meter for electricity, which is called Linky. Linky is a meter which is very impressive by its capacity to measure and to balance the grid for electricity, to provide electricity to citizens. But due to the fact that people fear to be stolen, that their data would be stolen by the provider, they had a very, very strong reaction against the implementation of this meter, and that's make it difficult today to really roll out this this meter. Thus, it's should be a very, very good solution for the people. But there is a reaction, like if there was a kind of conspiracy against this matter. So it's key to give confidence to the citizen. And the other point, on my point of view, is that you have to bring on board citizen representatives when you want to develop new smart city services. Otherwise, you will bring a service that will not obviously suit to the citizen needs, and they won't use either at all. So I think we have to have a very deep look at these two parts of the deployment of the smart city services. Yeah, thank you very much for this very interesting question. Of course, I think that the crisis will have an impact on smart city service deployments, because we could see during the pandemic that smart city services could be very useful for people who couldn't travel anymore, or who couldn't go to work anymore. We had an impressive development of ICT solutions all over the city, either for people in order to work, but also for teleworking, for example, but also to get information from the city without any necessity to go in the field with the CCTVs, with the sensors, with all those technical stuff we deployed previously, and that was really useful. On the other way, I would say also that this pandemic made us think about of the next steps we should have to follow in order to be more ready to another pandemic, either the COVID-19 second round or another one, because we know there will be some other pandemic in the next years. That's the only thing we can be sure of it now. We don't know when, and we don't know where, but there will be another one. And we specifically in ETSI, we work with a technical group which is called ETSI on the all the technical stuff we would be able to deploy to prevent the next pandemic. I will just give an example of wastewater management. We could see in the wastewater that if the COVID was present in the population, we could, due to this analysis of the waste management, we could prevent 5 to 8 days before people feel ill, really, that there was a COVID in the population. So we can be more prepared, we can anticipate, thanks to this wastewater management analysis. The next steps, yeah. We used to develop the different proof of concepts in 2 cities, for example, in France and in India, and we could do the same, I think, with, for example, a twin city of Bordeaux, for example, in Fukuoka. Why not? To prove that it's something which is really interoperable between the 2 continents and the 2 cities, the 2 countries, and well, that's maybe the next step that would be really fruitful for the cooperation between us. We have to find a use case, common one. Thank you very much, and thank you for your welcome.